The room had become a prison long before the walls closed in. Every morning, sunlight poured through the enormous windows of the mansion, touching priceless paintings, polished marble floors, and glittering crystal chandeliers, yet none of it reached the heart of the man lying silently in the massive hospital bed. Once feared and admired across the business world, billionaire industrialist Aldrich Rowan had not smiled in nearly 6 years. A devastating accident had left him completely paralyzed from the neck down, trapping his brilliant mind inside a body that refused to obey. Doctors called it a miracle that he had survived, but Aldrich often wondered whether survival without freedom was simply another form of punishment. The mansion echoed with expensive silence. Nurses came and went. Specialists promised hope before disappearing with another failed treatment. Family members visited only when lawyers scheduled meetings about trusts and investments. Every day looked exactly like the one before, until one ordinary afternoon changed everything forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life. Aldrich's eyes had become his only way of observing the world. He watched people carefully because it was all he could do. Most employees avoided looking directly at him, uncomfortable with his silent gaze. Some whispered when they thought he could not hear them. Others treated him like a piece of expensive furniture instead of a living man. He stopped expecting compassion years ago. Then one rainy Monday, a new housekeeper arrived. Her name was Mireia Solis, a 32-year-old widow who had accepted the position after working countless exhausting jobs just to keep a roof over her younger brother and aging mother. Life had never been gentle with her. Every morning before sunrise she prepared breakfast for her family, took crowded buses across the city, worked tirelessly throughout the mansion, and returned home late at night with aching feet but an unbroken spirit. She carried invisible burdens that no one inside the mansion ever noticed. Unlike the others, Mireia greeted Aldrich every morning with genuine warmth even though she knew he could not answer. She straightened the curtains to let in fresh daylight, carefully dusted the shelves without making unnecessary noise, and quietly described the weather outside as if she believed someone was listening. She talked about blooming flowers in the garden, birds building nests near the fountain, and children laughing in the park during her commute. She never expected a response. She simply believed that no human being deserved to spend an entire day surrounded by silence. Weeks slowly became months. Aldrich began waiting for the sound of Mireia's footsteps each morning. Though his expression never changed, something inside him did. Her simple words filled the endless emptiness that had consumed his days. She never complained about her own hardships, yet the exhaustion in her eyes revealed sleepless nights and endless responsibilities. Even after scrubbing floors, carrying heavy laundry baskets, and cleaning rooms larger than entire apartments, she somehow found enough kindness to speak gently to the man everyone else had emotionally abandoned. One unusually hot summer afternoon, the mansion buzzed with preparations for an important charity gala hosted by Aldrich's distant relatives. The entire staff rushed from room to room polishing silverware, arranging flowers, and preparing guest suites. Mireia had been working since before dawn without a single proper break. After finishing Aldrich's room, she sat quietly in the chair beside his bed, intending to rest for only a minute before continuing her duties. Her tired body surrendered before her mind could resist. She fell asleep. Her head leaned gently against the edge of the mattress. One hand still held the dusting cloth she had forgotten to put away. Loose strands of dark hair framed her peaceful face, and for the first time since arriving at the mansion, the endless weight she carried seemed to disappear as she slept. Aldrich stared at her. No one had ever felt safe enough to fall asleep beside him. Not family. Not friends. Not nurses. Not business partners. For years he had believed everyone stayed near him because they were paid to. Yet here was a woman so exhausted from caring for others that she accidentally fell asleep beside the very man everyone else feared or pitied. There was no performance. No calculation. No hidden motive. Only complete trust born from pure exhaustion. Something extraordinary happened inside him. The corners of Aldrich Rowan's mouth lifted ever so slightly. It was the smallest smile imaginable. But it was real. When the attending physician entered minutes later, he froze in disbelief. Nurses rushed into the room after hearing his astonished voice. None of them noticed the sleeping maid at first. Their attention remained fixed on the impossible expression resting gently across Aldrich's face. Medical records had documented 6 years without a single smile. Yet there it was, fragile as morning light. Mireia awoke suddenly, embarrassed beyond words. She apologized repeatedly, convinced she would lose the only stable job her family depended on. Instead, the physician quietly told her something she would never forget. Aldrich had smiled while looking at her. She could hardly believe it. News spread throughout the mansion faster than wildfire. Some employees dismissed it as coincidence. Others insisted it must have been a muscle spasm. But over the following days something continued changing. Whenever Mireia entered the room and spoke naturally about ordinary life, Aldrich's eyes brightened. His facial expressions slowly became more noticeable. Therapists who had nearly given up found renewed determination. His brain activity even showed subtle improvements during rehabilitation sessions. Meanwhile, Mireya's own struggles deepened outside the mansion. Her younger brother needed expensive surgery after an accident at his construction job, while medical bills for her mother continued piling higher each month. Despite overwhelming stress, she never allowed personal sorrow to affect the care she gave Aldrich. She still smiled each morning, even when her own heart quietly broke. One evening, after everyone else had left, a violent thunderstorm knocked out power across the neighborhood. Emergency generators activated only in critical areas of the mansion. The halls became dark and strangely peaceful. Mireya stayed beside Aldrich longer than usual because elevators had stopped working temporarily. She sat by the window watching rain race down the glass while speaking softly about her late husband, who had passed away years earlier from an illness they could never afford to treat. She admitted that some nights she questioned whether life ever became easier for people like her. Yet despite everything, she believed bitterness only made suffering heavier. She chose kindness because it was the only wealth no one could steal. A single tear rolled down Aldrich's cheek. For years, doctors believed his emotional responses had nearly disappeared. Yet somehow this ordinary woman reached places no medicine ever had. The following weeks marked the beginning of countless small miracles. Aldrich gradually learned to communicate through blinking technology more effectively than before. Physical therapists celebrated tiny improvements that would have seemed insignificant to outsiders but felt enormous within the walls of that room. His determination returned because someone had unknowingly reminded him that he was still human, still capable of touching another life. As Aldrich slowly regained purpose, he began asking questions through his communication device. He wanted to know about Mireya's family. He learned about the unpaid hospital bills, the sacrifices she made, and the dreams she had buried years ago simply to survive. She had once wanted to become a teacher but abandoned college after her father's sudden death forced her into full-time work. For the first time since his accident, Aldrich made a decision that had nothing to do with business. He instructed his legal team to establish an educational foundation supporting hardworking caregivers and domestic workers who sacrificed their own dreams while caring for others. He insisted the foundation remain anonymous until it became fully operational. Months passed. Physical recovery remained painfully slow, but emotional healing transformed the mansion completely. Staff members noticed that Aldrich no longer stared blankly at the ceiling for hours. Gardens were restored because he enjoyed watching flowers bloom outside his window. Music returned to the house. Laughter slowly replaced silence. Then came the morning of the foundation's official launch. Television crews gathered outside the estate expecting another wealthy philanthropist's publicity event. Instead, Aldrich surprised everyone by requesting that Mireya stand beside him during the announcement. Though still unable to move independently, he addressed the audience using advanced speech technology connected to his communication system. He explained that the strongest person he had ever met was not a billionaire, athlete, or politician. It was an exhausted maid who accidentally fell asleep beside a broken man because she had spent every ounce of her strength caring for everyone except herself. Without mentioning the smile directly, he said she reminded him that compassion asks for nothing in return, yet somehow gives everything. The audience stood in complete silence before erupting into heartfelt applause. Reporters expected dramatic business headlines that day. Instead, newspapers across the country carried a different message. Sometimes the richest gift is simply making another person feel less alone. The foundation immediately paid for Mireya's brother's surgery, covered her mother's treatment, and provided scholarships for hundreds of workers who had postponed their education because of financial hardship. Eventually, Mireya herself returned to university, studying education during evenings while continuing part-time work by choice rather than necessity. Years later, visitors entering the Rowan estate noticed one photograph displayed more prominently than any award or business achievement. It showed sunlight streaming through a hospital room window while an exhausted woman slept peacefully in a chair beside a man whose faint smile had quietly rewritten both of their lives. Doctors often described Aldrich's emotional recovery as medically remarkable. He always disagreed. Medicine helped his body. Kindness rescued his soul. His smile had not returned because someone performed a miracle. It returned because one tired woman unknowingly reminded him that even in life's darkest seasons, genuine compassion still exists where no one thinks to look. If this story touched your heart in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who believes goodness still exists, subscribe to channel name, and leave a comment. Your support allows these meaningful stories to reach more people who may need hope today. Special request: before you go, comment below. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. As the sun set behind the mansion that evening, golden light filled the room once more. It looked exactly as it had thousands of times before, yet everything was different. Wealth had failed to heal a shattered heart. Time had failed. The finest doctors had failed. But one exhausted soul, carrying burdens heavier than anyone knew, unknowingly gave a lonely man the courage to smile again. And that single smile became the beginning of hundreds of new lives filled with hope, proving forever that the greatest miracles rarely arrive with applause. They arrive quietly, in ordinary daylight, through ordinary people whose hearts remain extraordinary.